In the wake of the Naira scarcity crisis, the Central Bank of Nigeria has been trying to inject new notes into the economy. However, recent allegations have surfaced claiming that banks in Yobe State diverted billions worth of the Naira notes. According to the managing director of the Yobe Microfinance Bank, Dr. Sharif Mohammed Almuhajir, he has alleged that the sum of 4.3 billion Naira disbursed by the Central Bank of Nigeria to banks in the state have been diverted. Now, the news of the potential misappropriation of funds has caused outrage among the citizens in the region and raised several questions, though that report is tentative. Now, how the money got diverted remains unclear, and the Yobe State government has been unable to provide any meaningful explanation up to date. Now, amidst the ongoing investigations, the executive director has called for stringent measures to ensure that such an incident does not occur again. So this morning, to give credence to this morning's discussion, we have Dr. Sharif Almuhajir, who is the Professor Associate of Economics and Islamic Finance, and also the Managing Director, Yobe Microfinance Bank. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Now, this is how we're going to start. In the light of the latest developments, how easy it is for banks to move cash around unauthorized, both physically and virtually, without being detected by the Central Bank of Nigeria that is actually meant to monitor the activities of these banks?
First of all, we have to recognize the fact that Nigeria, with 36 states, has every state has its own different condition and circumstances, especially with regards to the economic activities. Yobe State is a state that has been receiving low patronage of commercial banks because it has been said time without number that out of the 17 local governments we have in Yobe State, only 4 local governments do have an active commercial banks. And the total number of these commercial banks, even within the 4 local governments, may not be beyond 35 to 40, which means that even if the bank to flow in the market, the society with the currencies, with the new Naira notes, it might have not been enough, because most of the banks do have ATM machines, like 2 or maximum 3 ATM machines to dispense cash. And out of these ATM machines, you may have one faulty, or probably you may have only 1 working or 2 working. So with this, we feel even if all the monies were circulated accurately by the banks, these monies wouldn't have been enough. These ATM machines wouldn't have been enough to satisfy the need of people in Yobe State. Similarly, the number of banks with 40 number of commercial banks, you may not argue with me that this number will not be satisfied for a state with more than 2 billion population, 2 billion people population. So with this regard, that's why we believe, we know the statistics, we know the grant being received by the state government monthly, and we understand that the Central Bank of Nigeria has been disbursing the cash, and the commercial banks have been signing to receive the cash on behalf of the people of Yobe State, that's to circulate among the people of Yobe State. But to our surprise, more than 10 days of this cash being disbursed in Yobe State, but still people cannot go about their daily activities, still people cannot access cash for their daily transactions, and with low knowledge, low ability to understand or to be in banking environment, because we have lowest financial inclusion in the country. Obviously, that indicates that these monies cannot circulate in Yobe State, and the monies being given by the central bank to commercial banks are not actually visible in the state, even within the state capital and the major towns, let alone the villages. So we are concerned by this issue. We are worried by this issue, and that affirms the claims by the central bank, because the central bank governor has been insisting that he has been disbursing these monies to commercial banks, while he believes that some commercial banks do not carry their responsibilities effectively to disburse these monies to the people.
All right, Dr. Sharif, Dr. Sharif, let me just take you on there. There was an article, and I know that you're aware of it, where you claim that these monies could have been diverted because, of course, you said they're not in circulation and they're not, enough in circulation for the people in Yobe State to access and make do with. So are you saying that truly these monies have been diverted, and do you have documents or evidences to prove this claim that you have made?
We are not saying that the monies have been diverted. The monies are not seen within the state. When you have 4 billion naira within Yobe State, obviously we will feel it. So what I said is that I believe that these monies could have been diverted or not been disbursed by the banks. It might have not been diverted, but they maybe are still domiciled within the banks, or diverted when we will not know how it is diverted, but we don't see them in our markets.
Well, which means the claim is not affirmative, it's a tentative speculation.
Of course, what we did is to give reasons that we don't see these monies in the town. We don't see this money within the state.
All right, you said it's been 10 days now that this has been ongoing. Have you made any formal approach probably to the Yobe State government or to the Central Bank of Nigeria to lodge this claim or to document what you have actually observed? Has there been any response from them whatsoever?
Obviously, Yobe State government has done its part by inviting members of the Central Bank, members of all local government chairmen, the state government, the state secretary to the state government, and set down that this is a big concern. And even representative of the central bank are there. They assured us, they make all presentations that monies will be available. Monies are even available. But our concern is we don't see the monies in the town. Very few people. You will see right now as I'm coming to my office, I saw hundreds of people being queued up in ATM machines trying to access 10,000 as approved by the central bank. But these people, their number tells you specifically that either the machines are not enough or the monies are not there.
All right. Okay. Well, fine. So we've been able to establish that it is a speculation that these funds are being diverted because they're not enough in circulation. That is one. But then, does it now give a bit of credence, so to speak, that maybe the banks, the commercial banks in Nigeria, are deliberately sabotaging the efforts of the Central Bank of Nigeria, most especially the cashless policy that is hoping to implement and gain success from?
These are allegations that we cannot categorically mention that the commercial banks are sabotaging the efforts of central bank. It is a central bank that could make such allegations, but all our concern here in Yobe State, and I'm speaking to you as the managing director of the state-owned bank, we believe that the monies are not circulated. Who has the monies? Where are the monies? We may not be able to identify. We may not be able to know, because that's not within our limit, within our capacity to start investigating. That's why we call on people who are given the charge to investigate such things to do their job adequately, and which we believe they are trying to do, because we've had a lot of stories that there are investigators going on to check and confirm that the money is circulated. And
all right, let's just
come up with something.
All right, let's just scale discussion up a bit and make it more general. Now, we understand that, or we are aware that some banks have been raided by the Central Bank of Nigerian officials, and some bank managers that have been found complicit and affecting the hoarding of the Naira notes in their vaults. Some of them have been apprehended. Of course, we are yet to know what the next step the central bank will be taking. But then, in your own opinion, would you say that the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing enough to curb the excesses of these banks?
Actually, from the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria, we believe that the plan or the policies on how to disburse these monies are not enough. The mechanisms being put in by central bank to get people have access to monies are not enough. And I believe central bank as governing body in charge of all financial transactions in the country are having the right to check whether all these provisions they have made to people to have access to the Naira note are met or not. So if they are not met, I believe it is their responsibility to take charge and do what they're supposed to do. How they want to do, that's their issue. That's their way. But our issue is we cry on behalf of people. We talk on behalf of our people who are actually being deprived for their daily normal activities.
All right.
Our students in the university cannot go to school anymore. Some of them do trek to the university because of the scarcity of these monies. And I believe it's a serious issue and a serious concern to us, actually.
Dr. Sheriff, being a stakeholder and, of course, an advocate for the population of the new Naira notes for Nigerians, I'd like to ask you this. Based on reports, the current new notes that are said to be available got about 58.618 billion Naira to print. And even the CBN has said that it has the capacity to print more to meet up with the cash crunch. But then, looking at it holistically, what do you think the Apex Bank can do to actually deal with this cash crunch, aside from having to look at the areas or the challenges or the bottlenecks associated with the availability of these funds in circulation?
You see, this policy has exposed a lot of things in the Nigerian monetary policies, in the central bank issues, because it has exposes that even the Central Bank of Nigeria is not really ready to reduce this issue and to help the communities have access to their normal life. It also exposes how low level of commercial banks are within some societies, in fact, within some states in the country. It also exposes the poor infrastructure we have as far as banking industry is concerned. There is limited availability of banks everywhere, and the central bank has not done anything, because you will have a state in the country with more than 300, 400 commercial banks, while a state with 40, 30 commercial banks. This is not acceptable. In as much as we believe we are living in one country, then the central bank should provide a policy that could be accommodated by all societies, all states, and also make sure that even the printing of the currencies being printed, you are talking about 4 trillion naira being mopped out of banks while you print only 300 billion. How can this be quantified in as much as need and demand is concerned? So I believe there is deliberate attempt by the central bank to create unnecessary scarcity of the Naira notes, which eventually will affect small businesses, and it's even affecting small businesses within the state, within the major states in the country. And also, many people are, right now, as I'm telling you, in Yobe State, many shops are still closed and down because people do not have access to accounts.
But then what do you think the central bank is hoping to gain if it is deliberately trying to ensure that there ain't more cash, new notes in circulation? What do you think the aim of the central bank is?
With my experience of living in other countries, I want to believe that the policy of cashless policy, because there are two policies there, cashless policy and Naira redesign. The cashless policy is adopted everywhere and is a very good policy which has been in practice in many parts of the world. No country progresses its economy while dealing with cash in the hands of people. So this is accepted. However, to mop out the already having currencies in hand of people, I believe it is not correct. I believe it is not yet time. I believe it should have been taken step by step. I believe they should have considered people, especially in this part of extreme northeast, that our states are still recovering from the crisis of Boko Haram. Local governments are just being recovered from the hands of Boko Haram and crisis. So they could have implemented these policies pace by pace. And I believe they should print more Naira notes. And even if they could not be able to do that, I am in tandem with the suggestion made by the Nigerian Council, the recommendation of Nigerian Council of Leaders, or what you call them, the
National Council of State.
They should have National Council of State. They should recirculate the old Naira notes so as to reduce the tension currently ongoing in the market. Because we deal, as a microfinance bank managing director, we deal directly with people in the small scale industry, while central bank deals with the banks, not even with business owners. But we know that the akara seller, the sugarcane seller cannot even come out to market these days. And what happened to their resources? What happened to their families? So this is our concern. I believe central bank should look into this and should pump more monies in the society so that we will be able to live our normal life.
All right, finally, Dr. Sherry, before I let you go, would you say this premature, or it is apt for the central bank to push out the cashless policy? Because what it's hoping to achieve is to ensure that there's limited physical cash, but people are internet compliant, are able to transact their businesses and transfer money online. So in terms of the education of the populace and the internet facility that we have in the country, would you say it's apt or premature?
See, recently there are statistics that indicates that Nigeria has limited access to network. Some in Yobe, we have places that do not even have network, let alone to talk about internet. And let me tell you, in Yobe State, we deal with some Nigerian states in Niger that are dealing with Naira instead of their Sefa. Like this Difa is a state in Niger, which is closer to Yobe State. From Difa, for you to come to Damaturu, if you travel from Difa to come to Damaturu, you have to travel more than 340 kilometers then to see a commercial bank. So there isn't network coverage in this country, everywhere in this country. There isn't internet facility. Even recently, this policies has exposed many commercial banks that do not have their networks are very low and do not have access. You cannot invent or make their internet provision or service provision strong enough to provide the services required by Nigerians. So central banks should slow down and look into, maybe work with the Ministry of Information and Technology, try to passion and iron out, solve these problems, then come into implementation of these policies. These policies are, to us, are very dangerous policies because there is no way we can go on these policies. Salaries are paid in Yobe State on the 25th of last month, and I can assure you, up till this moment, today is about 10 or 12, up to this very moment, many people could not access their salaries. And even if you wanted to transfer is even more difficult. Using POS, we're still requesting and hoping that the banks will supply and provide more POS merchants and agency POS to us so that we can be able to reach out to our people so that they can be able to transact.
Okay.
The said government has done its best and asked the Yobe Microfinance Bank to open 17 branches all over the country. But CBN is not giving us cash. CBN is limiting all microfinance banks to access of only 1 million naira in a week. How can 1 million naira satisfy a bank like ours with more than 120,000 customers within a state of 17 local governments?
All right.
So these are things that we should have realized and we should have looked into, and I believe gradually they would, inshallah, make some corrections to that.
Well, that is the hope of so many Nigerians, because at the end of the day, you discover that it is these Nigerians who are hoping to have this cash either for personal use or their businesses that are suffering because they cannot have access to it. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharif, for joining our discussion.
Thank you very much.
Now.